Having worked at a bank for over 5 years, I was originally under the impression that if you had nice luxury items, it meant that you were wealthy. However, I quickly came to the realization that the individuals that had the expensive and flashy items were not those that had the high cash balances, but instead the high debt balances. So today, I want to break down why I believe it's important to not chase a rich lifestyle. Pursuing appearance turns wants into needs. Unfortunately for many of us during our time in school, we come to the conclusion that one's appearance and/or results is what makes you relevant in the social hierarchy. The star athlete is able to completely change whatever trend is popular because their athletic and social results speak for themselves. So if you are wanting to climb the social hierarchy, to fit in, to become popular, then you need to follow those trends. And unfortunately, this just becomes even more potent as we get older. But I believe it's because there's a fundamental error in the way in which we set aim or we have our goals in our life. Now, if I am a single person and I want to have a new car, but my goals or my aim is to be able to have a healthy relationship with myself, with my finances, with the people in my life, so that whenever I find my partner, I'm able to fully love them and live a happy and healthy life, well, then the car stays a want. It isn't needed for me to be able to achieve those things, to be able to achieve my goal. But if I am single and I want to have a new car, and my goal or my aim is to look like I am wealthy, to look like I am confident, to look like I am ready to be able to protect a partner for the rest of our life, well, then the car is now needed to be able to achieve those goals. It helps play the part of the illusion that you are wanting to prepare. Now, unfortunately, social media has just proved this theory to be true because it is almost impossible to be able to keep up with the digital trends. They come and go so quickly. It takes an immense amount of resources to stay relevant. Now, I believe that fundamentally most of us have very similar goals. We want to be loved, we want to love, we want to protect our family, we want to feel fulfilled or make a difference, we want to be happy. But the way in which we achieve our goals is the price tag that we put upon that. The cost always goes beyond the price tag. Many of you know that during high school, I drove a 1999 Crown Victoria. I remember clear as day, whenever I was driving to school one day, this girl that I knew or went to school with me completely rear-ended me. We pulled over to the side and she starts bawling her eyes out. And it caught me off guard. And when I found out that she was okay and she just kept trying to give me her insurance, I had to be like, as long as you're okay, we can leave. I don't care. Everything is fine. And she was stunned and ended up getting in her car and she drove off. What mattered to me was that we were both okay and that her car wasn't damaged. It was fine. Nothing was going to happen to my car. And we just moved on. I never thought about it. Then I bought a $2,500 two-door Ford Focus. I spend zero time thinking about it. I park it wherever I find a parking spot. Sometimes I lock it, sometimes I don't. It doesn't matter. I find that there's more important things to think about than my car. But recently I was in Denver and I stayed at my uncle's place and I drove his Infiniti while they were gone. And what I noticed was that it was the first time I'd ever developed paranoia about a particular item, specifically a car. And I noticed that every time I would lock the car, I locked it multiple times to make sure all the doors were locked. If I was gonna go somewhere, I would park 3 blocks away and just run there because I didn't want anything to happen to the car in the parking lot. If I was touching the screen or whatever, the dashboard or whatever it is with my fingers, I would then use my sleeve to get rid of the smudge mark because I felt like me using it was ruining the item. And in certain ways, this was because I wanted to respect my uncle and I didn't want to, mess up whatever nice thing he had. But also it was because it was a nice car and I felt like I couldn't use a nice car. I felt like to use it was to ruin it. So I had to anyway, Ironically, this story is about to come to a great part. One of the last days I was driving it, I was backing into this kind of like crooked parking spot. And of course, each person to the left and the right of me were kind of parked in. So it was really hard for me to be able to turn in. I almost make it, and then I nick the person to my left. Their car was perfectly fine. They weren't upset. They just went along their day. Our car, or the Infinity, had a dent, like, I don't know, that big. Totally kind of just irrelevant. I was about to projectile vomit everywhere. I thought that I had just ruined the car. I was ready to I don't even know. It ruined. I was like, this whole trip is ruined. The past 2 weeks is just doomed. I can't believe what I did. And I just got so negative on myself. I literally thought because of this small dent, I ruined this nice Infinity. And so I tell my uncle, and he says, don't worry about it. It's an old car. I'm not concerned. As long as you're okay, everything's fine. And it really just hit me of this realization of so often we have these items in our life that are specifically intended to serve a purpose in benefiting us. A car is supposed to get you from A to B. But if we develop some sort of emotional connection with the item, if we have some sort of way that we are pushing or projecting something onto a vehicle per se for our appearance or justification in society, all of these different things, well, now the vehicle or the item begins to own us. I find that we are in a very loud, noisy, chaotic society. Every which way we turn, there's some new headline, some massive news thing, just so many different ways in which it's trying to pull our attention away. And I think while things are so distracting, the items in our life should not also be a part of that. I shouldn't feel like I have to think every single time I park my car about my car. There's much more pressing matters that deserve our attention. No one cares. When I worked at the bank, a nice appearance was strongly encouraged. A nice, short, clean haircut for a male. Make sure that you always have your suit pressed. Nice, shine shoes. And in certain ways, I totally get it. I think it's important to have certain levels of physical professionalism. But as a teller, I was spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars of very nice Johnson & Murphy shoes or very nice name brand suits. I would even make sure that the dress shirt I would wear, the sleeves would come up a little bit so you could see my watch. And it wasn't until I became a banker when I realized for so long I had used the physical items to speak for me. Why do I need to know anything about banking if you can just see, hey, I have a nice watch, a nice a suit, and the shoes that are behind the counter that you never see are Johnson & Murphy. I realized that being a banker required to be able to speak well, to be able to have empathy, to be able to listen, to be able to have these other skill sets to make sure that I do my job well for the service of the client. And so as I began to really hone in my skills to be able to do the job justice, I no longer had the mental energy to really care about the way that I looked. And that doesn't mean that I just became trashy looking, but what I did is I really aimed for comfort. I found slacks that fit me the best, and well, I just wore those every single day. I found a dress shirt that I liked that was the most comfortable, wore it every single day. I wore the exact same shoes every single day. I was like Steve Jobs of the black shirt and jeans. I just thought, I don't have the resources, the time, the energy to think about this. I have more pressing matters at hand. And as I started to really hate the job and as I was preparing to leave, by the end of it, I had a hole in my crotch, I had a stain in my shirt, and the shoelaces completely deteriorated on my shoes. But throughout this time, no one, not a single person ever said anything about the way that I looked. I had grown my hair out, and that was the only thing that people actually said that they liked. But besides that, no one said a thing about the way that I looked. I feel that oftentimes we sometimes take a step back on honing in our skill sets because we believe that as long as we have a good physical appearance, as long as we paint our mold to look a certain way, then you don't need to do the work on the back end. I personally believe that having some sort of professional appearance just gets you in the door, or at least close to the door. But everything else that makes you, you, the skills that you have, is what gets you into the door to be able to get the deal done. And this isn't to say that, like, wanting to look good isn't something that you should aspire to have. I personally like watches. I like the symbolism behind it. I like to look good. I do my best to tame my hair in whatever way that I can. I think you can see I care about the aesthetics of the ways that the videos look. But I do it for myself. I do it because I genuinely care about it. The watch that if I wore a watch, I do it because it means something to me. And I think that's very important because typically the people that will actually care about the way that you look or make it a big deal are typically the people that you don't want in your life because that is what matters to them. The people you want in your life look past whatever way you look, whatever items you have, because they want to know what's actually happening within. Health is the real wealth. Many of you know that I was recently in the hospital, and for those of you that don't, I had a binary pulmonary embolism, or blood clots in both of my lungs. And just moments before my mom ended up taking me to the hospital, I was sitting on the edge of my tub, just completely unable to breathe. And I thought to myself, this is my time here on earth. And I had only two thoughts. Two thoughts came to my mind. The first one, I hope that my parents will be okay. And the second one, I wish I was more kind to myself. And that was it. I thought my time here is done. And those were the only two things I was thinking of. I was not thinking, man, I wish I had a nicer car. Or, man, what are people going to think about the clothes that I had? What are people even going to think? All of these things that we spend so much time on didn't matter. I didn't think about it at all. Like I've mentioned, I believe that we put so much emphasis on our physical items and how they make us feel, the way in which we want to be seen to the world, the successes we want to be shown to everyone, to show us that we're a good person. All these different ways in which we use physical items to represent something other than just the physical item it is. If you wanted, or if your aim or your goal was to get married, but you treat yourself like absolute trash, how many times do you say no to the right person because they aren't filling that need for you, because they aren't making you feel like a better person? How many times do you have to buy the new car, the nice clothes, the nice house to show everyone you are worth something if you look in the mirror and you hate what you see? How much resources are going to get depleted to be able to somehow solve the illusion of just what's staring you right back in the face or staring you right back in the mirror? I think a lot of what we do is we believe that the work gets shown with the physical representation. I believe it's actually the inverse. I feel that you can tell the person that's worked the hardest by the way in which they carry themselves, by their mannerisms, by the way in which they share their dialect, the way in which they have empathy towards another person, the way in which they actually care for the world. I think that is the sign of character that you want the society to see. So, to just summarize all of this, I think to be able to have some sort of physical representation is important. We just have to accept we live in a society where looking good is important. But the way in which you achieve good doesn't have to be super expensive. I think just as long as you look somewhat representable, what matters is what is within. What matters is the way in which you're aiming at your goal. What matters is the way in which you are treating yourself and your neighbors, the way that you are putting love into the world. So I hope that this was able to provide some sort of value to you guys. Thank you for sitting here and just listening to me talk about these things. I hope that it helped in some sort of way. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
How could you, Mr. Krabs? You promised these children Krabby the Clown, but all I saw out there was Chiefy the Cheapskate.
Hey, I ain't cheap. Now take this tomato back to the kitchen before it spoils.